in my journey, walking away from tenure track professor, full-time academia, which that came with its own feelings of shame and guilt and like, oh no, I don't want to let anyone down. Having conversations with my husband about, I want to leave my 9 to 5 digital marketing agency job because I feel really strongly about this. I feel like I could have impact and make a difference. It's not easy, especially when conventionally it's like, why would you do that? Why would you leave your 9 to 5 job? You have a baby on the way. But
today we are talking with Rowena, and she is going to share her wisdom about self-love. I met Rowena a couple months ago online, and she has so many dynamic things about her. And we're going to get to learn a little bit. It's going to make you want to follow her and engage even more. Rowena, please tell us a little bit about what you do right now and or what you used to do.
Thank you so much, Rachel, first of all, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be able to chat with you about myself and what I do and to connect with your community. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Rowena Winkler, and I call myself the Inner Muse Mentor. Now, what the heck does that mean? Basically, I use my experiences as a professor. I have a Ph.D. in communication. I'm also a creative and an astrologer. I also read tarot and I do human design. I use all of these tools to help women tap into what I call that inner muse, which is that voice that because of conditioning or the need for external validation, or in my case, dealing with perfectionism, homegirl gets a little dim, that we can't hear her. And so I work with women to find that inner muse and use a variety of tools and strategies and best practices based off of what's worked for me and for my other clients to help women find their voice and tap into that divine feminine authenticity.
I love that. I love that. As you were talking, I was thinking about, there's a quote about all children are artists, and the true challenge is still maintaining that when you're an adult. And when I think about the muse, I think about creativity and the things inside of us that want to come out. And I'm curious, was there ever a point in your life where you felt it was stronger, this self-expression and the communication, or have you had like lags where it wasn't such a big way that you were able to express yourself? Like, I'm a little bit curious how that has looked for you over the course of your life.
Yes, and I love how you're exactly right. It's tied to the muses because of that creativity, where the muses come from in Greek mythology. So I am a creative myself. I do musical theater performance, so I love to sing and dance and act. I met my husband ballroom dancing at the University of Maryland in College Park. Go Terps. And for me, that part of my life has been a through line. Performing and singing in particular is my therapy. It's what grounds me. It's what brings me joy and gratitude. But in regards to other times in my life, absolutely. That's why as a teacher and a mentor, I'm very intentional with what I say to students and how I connect with students, because I'm sure you've had experiences and the folks watching have had experiences where one thing that a teacher says to you can change the trajectory of your entire creative life. I mean, how many times have we heard that a child no longer wants to engage in drawing or in writing because of what someone has said about the work that they do? But here's the thing, we are all creatives. We all have the capacity to be creative and to create. It's just exactly what you said. It's finding the space and the freedom to be able to express ourselves in a way where we don't feel judged or held back.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. And I love how you say it's been for you, this creative expression has been this through line, because that's a really nice way of staying grounded despite all the different transitions in life and different stages. And when did you, like, as a child, when were you first in a music class or a dance class? Let us get a little insight into what was it like for little Rowena?
I love these questions, especially since adult Rowena has been doing a lot of little Rowena work. So it's very top of mind for me right now.
Good.
So my mother has cassette tapes, for folks who still remember how to record with audio cassette tape, of when I was 2-3 years old, singing Jingle Bells, singing songs, Alvin and the Chipmunks theme songs. So I've always been a performer of sorts, right? I'm a Pisces, my astrological sign's Pisces, so very creative sign. And so I've always enjoyed, that creative side of me. And that's something that I've always been interested in, but I didn't do my first musical. I was in 6th grade. There was a community theater program in our town, and my sister and I did our first show. It was Lil Abner. I don't even know if anyone knows that show. It's not as well known. Yeah. but that was it. And I did musical theater, community theater. I did the shows in high school. That, my goodness, doing theater in high school was so, it was so transformative for me. I had an amazing director who really pushed us to, we did shows like Les Miserables and Into the
Wow.
Woods, these productions that aren't your typical high school theater shows, but it was just an amazing way to tap into, and that's what I love about theater and art, right? It's a way to explore the human experience in this very interesting way by building these worlds and creating these characters. But I will say, what I've also found as I've gotten older and reflected on these experiences is, for the longest time, it was easier for me to play a character than to be Rowena, if that makes sense. That was something that had come up in college and afterward, for sure.
Ooh, I'm really feeling that. So
Yeah.
thank you for being courageous enough to say that with us and say it out loud. I don't know how much you talk about this specific detail, but it feels so, what I'm feeling in my heart right now is like the compassion that you feel for yourself now, but also the awareness of like, wait a minute, I can be someone on stage, but when can I be my full self off of stage?
Yeah. No, thank you. I received that. And something that I've been working on and I work with my clients on is this intentional vulnerability, right? That being able to share these things, I know we're challenging and can be challenging to bring up, but these stories are what magnetizes people to you, and there's a resonance and there's a relevancy there, right? Because that's how we can connect with each other, is by sharing these stories. As I mentioned, I've dealt with perfectionism. I'm a recovering perfectionist. There are parts of that still come through now in my awareness. And yeah, that was a mask, right? That was another character that I was playing in order to show up in a way that I thought people would love me, would value me. And it took a lot of work. As I mentioned, I've been hanging out with little Rowena and just telling her that she's okay as she is, and that despite what has happened, that she's cared for and loved, So that's been the work that I've been delving into, and related, I work through with my clients.
Yes. Oh gosh. And there's a couple of things I want to get into, but first I want to ask you this question.
Sure.
Because I think I have my own way of realizing, oh, here's when I'm putting on a mask or putting on a face or trying to be a certain way because that's what other people expect. Do you have a way that either for yourself or when you're working with your clients, you can dig into how do you know if it's a mask? Because when you mentioned that with perfectionism, I was thinking, I'm a perfectionist too, and or recovered or whatever.
Yeah.
Who knows what stage I'm truly
right,
at.
exactly. It's cyclical, right? We're like, oh, we're back there again.
but I'm thinking, well, I could see that somebody might just think that's who I am. It's not a mask. It's just, this is just me. This is the expectation. So is there a way that you think we could figure out what are the masks that are either that we're having to effort and try and be someone that we're not truly, or we're putting on a face for others that doesn't really feel authentic? Like, how do you know when you're wearing a mask?
Sure. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So as I mentioned, I study and use human design in the work that I do. And my type, I'm a sacral generator, which means that I get cues from my sacral energy when it's usually a yes, no. And so that's one of the first indicators. I get a very strong or an no, thank you, right? And I think before, because of being a people pleaser, because of wanting to show up with this mask, I would ignore the no thank you and go through with it anyway, and then find out that I'm frustrated because I am doing this other thing that I don't want to do, or I don't like, or that's not in alignment for me. And so that was one way that I tap into that. Another indicator for me is that there's just, you know this, right? Like intuitively, you can sense, because I'm an anxious human. So the rumination, right? Like the constant like hypervigilance and checking of myself when I'm putting on a facade is very evident. Whereas when I know that I'm being my true authentic self, when I'm in a flow state, when I am being creative, there's nothing. There's like, I'm so grounded and so in the moment and so joyous and just being with my people, and yeah, not having to check every single thing that I think and say and do. And that's exhausting. That's exhausting work.
Right. Oh, I agree. And as I love all that you're sharing, because I'm thinking there are instances where, and I'm pretty good about checking myself now, but I think it's a habit of learning. If I'm over analyzing, okay, what do I say to this person? Yes. How do I say it? Like if I'm trying to manage the situation and thinking about something day after day after day, and like, well, maybe I should say it that, and I'm all about honesty. So I'm not going to lie. Like in some ways it'd be easier if I was just make up a lie and then move on. But it's like, how can I be honest to myself? How can I be honest to them? But then there's still the part of me that's like, but I want to let them down easy, or they want me to say yes to this thing, but I don't want to do that. And so, yeah, that over analyzing then, and this is maybe a people pleasing mask of like, I can't, or I'm overthinking and thinking all of these things because I don't just want to say, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Which would be, in some instances, that's what I want to say. That's the true me. And then I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Woo, that responsibility is gone.
Right. I heard this on a podcast. I don't remember which podcast or who said this. So I don't have the attribution, but someone said on a podcast that I listened to recently that setting boundaries is a loving act. And that just hit me really hard because, again, I mentioned I'm a Pisces, I'm a water sign. So I call permeable boundaries. So because I just have, my heart chakra is like, I love and care for so much about my people and I do this with my daughter, with my 2.5-year-old. It's hard for me to say no because I just want to be there for people, but at what cost, right? And that's another indicator of the mask, right? Like is burnout and overwhelm and stress and not prioritizing yourself over other people. And so yeah, it's those reframes that have really helped me a lot, is like, no, setting this boundary not only shows that I honor and value myself and my time and my energy, but it's also making space for something that's more in alignment for me and more what I want to do to come into my life, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Ooh. And I'm kind of running with this idea right now of like a tangible, practical thing that sums up a lot of what you've been saying right now is, what about a self-love minute? And it could be a meditation, or it could just be a moment where you check in, like you said, because I think if we're never taking the time to check in, we're not going to realize these habitual masks that we're wearing and the behaviors that we're used to having. But if you have this self-love minute every day where you take a moment to check in, you take a moment to look at, okay, what am I getting ready to agree to? Or am I having boundaries that really honor me? Am I saying no when the answer is no? Or am I loving everyone else, but neglecting the person who I am? And so I think all of those can really help people to cultivate self-love, of giving themselves that moment to just take a quiet moment, however works best for people, and just tune in and see, what does my intuition tell me about this?
Yeah. And here's the thing, right, Rachel, is that we're all intuitive. We all have that intuition. It's just a matter of cultivating it and providing the space for it. And listen, y'all, I'm I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm a Eastern person. So I get the like, go, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. And, that energy has served me well for a long time until it no longer didn't. And I was sick and burnt out. Right. So yeah, being able to take that self-love minute and honoring that, because we bombard, we overload our calendars with all these distractions, because sometimes the sitting with ourselves is super uncomfortable and we don't like it because we're so used to being inundated with messages, whether it's from the media or from, there's sensory overload, explosion.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. But as you and I know, taking that breath, that beat, as you mentioned, a minute, literally a minute, right? I'm currently potty training my 2.5-year-old, and she has to sit on the potty for a minute. It's not that long.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with it right now with my kiddo, right? Just a minute and a beat to be able to know where you're at. And if it's not, good or what have you, that's okay too. Just being open to leaning into those feelings and being curious about it and exploring. Maybe there is a root. As I mentioned, I have this perfectionism, which, as one of my faves, Dr. Brene Brown, talks about, the perfectionism, it stems from these feelings of insecurity and not wanting to be judged or not wanting to show up, because we're afraid that showing up without being perfect is no one's going to like it. So yeah, I think that's a very valuable practice that you're bringing up here.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I'm glad you brought up the showing up and not wanting to be judged being all interlinked with perfectionism. One of the things that you said earlier, I want to come back to, because I have ways that I work with my own inner child, and it sounds like you have a practice. I don't know if it's the short-term future or if you're always working with your inner child, but can you tell people a little bit of, is that a way that it's increasing your self-love or increasing your ability to say yes to the things you want to say yes to, or say no to the things that it's a no? Like, either what does that practice look like, or tell us just a little bit more so we can have some insight. Maybe people will think, okay, I want to do that with my inner child.
Sure. No, I love that you went back to that, because it's been such an important practice for me that I've started doing the past couple of years, but I think cancer season in particular, because that's that mother nurture energy. I really dove in deep with it, and it's been super powerful. So one of the previous questions you asked was about, what sparked my creativity or how. So what's interesting is that I've always been a very vibrant child, very, curious and precocious and singing, dancing. And what's really fun is that my little one is very similar. So it's really fun to see. So I have like a living representation of little Rowena in my little one. So that's been fun. But I unfortunately experienced some big T trauma when I was 11. I was sexually abused, and that was, an experience that shifted things. And upon reflection, I think that's what really kicked off the perfectionism and the academic performance, because I made a choice that if I do really well in school and do what I'm supposed to do, that perhaps I can't get hurt. Right. So and it was through that inner child work where I was able to sit and invite little Rowena in and literally have conversations with her and be able to let her know that even though this experience has happened, that she's loved and that she's so strong. And she, again, it was another reframe where I moved from a victim to a survivor, and that despite what happened, I came out of it and I'm doing really well. So that was one piece of it that motivated me, because I realized that in that traumatic experience, that changed everything, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not alone in this experience. When these things happen when we're young, these
Mm-hmm.
traumatic experiences, it shapes the way we are as adults.
Mm-hmm.
Something a newer thing that I've been tapping into, and I will credit the Almost 30 podcast for this, is inner teen work. So hanging out with my teenage self, not just little Rowena, but teenager Rowena, who, as I mentioned, was a theater performer and honors kid, all this stuff. But as I'm sure you can gather, being a teenager is its own unique beast. And for example, I went to the Backstreet Boys concert over Labor Day weekend and got to experience the Backstreet Boys, which was who I listened to in high, right? So just doing things like that. And as I mentioned, music is very like, that really hits my soul hard. So being able to like scream my little heart out and to dance, I turned to my friend and I said, my inner teen is so satisfied. So things like that, music, if you loved to color, if you loved to write poetry, that was another thing. I loved writing poems in high school and stopped because I had a teacher that compared me to, right. So, right, there was something that happened. I went away from it and then I'm picking it up again. So finding those things that brought you joy when you were younger, to connect with that inner child, that inner teen, and to immerse yourself in and tap into those experiences has been really helpful for me.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you brought up again of this, I don't think some of these teachers and other people in our lives, sometimes it maybe is malicious why they say things, but a lot of times I think it isn't. I think they're just giving their opinion.
Right.
But it's very easy to be like, well, that's the gospel truth and that's the way it is now. This is, reality has spoken. Yeah. Because if you kept with, I write terrible poems, or you only write poems like so-and-so. Well, I'm not my own self. I'm like so-and-so, so I can't do it anymore. If you stuck with that belief, you would be missing out on the writing of the poetry. And I'm thinking about, for me, recently I started taking voice lessons, and I recalled a time from my childhood when someone told me that I wasn't singing very well. And that made me stop singing so much, because I would just hear what they said almost every time I tried to sing. And so taking the voice lessons, one, I'm actually learning how to sing. So it's like, maybe that person was accurate, but I had no idea how to sing. I was just singing from the joy in my heart, not necessarily hitting the right notes. But now I'm learning how to hit the right notes. And it's like, I can feel the joy and that self-expression is coming out now. And it's allowing me, I consciously had allowed to, okay, I'm going to release that belief. Just because that one person said it doesn't mean it's true. And then I let myself have the experience again of enjoying the things that I enjoy. Because anyone listening, I feel we probably all have at least one thing, or maybe several, that somebody told us we were bad at, or some version of that, and we just let that be it and we close the book on it. But what about letting ourselves say, well, that was just one person's opinion. Like, I want to see, what if I take this further? What if I try it out a little bit more?
Yeah. Related, I had a conversation just yesterday with a friend about our parents. So similar, right?
Yes.
In terms of authority figures that say things that resonate with us. I feel more so our parents, absolutely. And something that we talked about is how to remind ourselves that our parents are human beings too, right? And that given the context, given the environment, given the circumstances, given the information that they had, they're doing the best that they can. Exactly. And I feel that I definitely have empathy now, more so as a parent myself, right? That when I became a mom, I said, oh, okay, that shifted my perspective a lot on, we're doing the best that we can, because I know their experiences when I look back, and, I don't think, as you mentioned, I don't think it was intentional, But
Mm-hmm.
my parents, I'm an immigrant child. My parents came here
Mm.
from the Philippines, and so they wanted my sister and I to perform well and to create a good
Mm-hmm.
life here in the United States. And so I think I internalize that a lot as well as my perfectionism, like, oh, well, I have to do
Right.
well on this thing to please my parents so that they don't
Right.
feel like they sacrificed and came to this country not knowing
Mm-hmm.
anybody for what, you know? So we put a lot of pressure
Yeah.
on ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that element of it too, because I'm sure we could probably do a whole podcast just on that.
Absolutely. Oh goodness. I know. How much time do you have about?
And I'm reading a book, We Were Dreamers, I think is the name of it,
Mhm.
about, I forget his name, but he's an actor and his parents came over they moved from China to Canada. And so him talking about his experience of being an immigrant is making me think there's so many different things that can come up. And like you said, it's like I have to succeed, not just for me, but it's the sacrifices my family made, honor, and all of that. I'm so excited to tell you about the upcoming book, Talk to the Trees, written by myself, Rachel Strivelli, psychic creative. Talk to the Trees is a short book that's somewhat practical, somewhat metaphysical, totally amazing, very spiritual, about connecting to the wisdom of the trees, actually literally talking to them, metaphorically talking to them, learning from the wisdom of these elder beings related to what can we gain from them in terms of resilience, how to get through hard times, how to approach the times that we're in. What do trees know about love and family and connection and dealing with hardships of life? There's so many great things in this very short book. You can buy it at the places linked below. I would love it if you check it out, share it with a friend, buy it for a friend, and spread the word. And when you're a kid, that might seem like a lot to have on your shoulders. And then when you're an adult, it's like, well, when do you learn, okay, I can turn that off or turn the dial down, or I only need this sometime. Like, let me use it when I'm consciously using it, but not let it drive me to the point of irrational, extreme, driving me to burnout type of energy.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that resonates so much. And I know for me, and I would hope that it doesn't get to this point for other folks that are listening. It was when my father passed away from cancer in 2013. He got really sick. I was finishing my dissertation for my doctorate. I actually dedicated my dissertation to my dad, thinking that he would be okay, but he passed away in 2013. And several months later, after, I got my Ph.D. in May and he passed away in October, that shifted everything. Then it was like, wait. What is all this work for? What am I prioritizing here? What is my legacy here? What am I leaving behind? Are these achievements or all these things that I'm working so hard for? Is this need to be perfect? Is it, worth it in the end if I have no connection, no family, no love and joy in my life, just being? That really changed a lot for me personally.
Yes, thank you. And was there also an element? I've known other people who they reach a point too where they realize, how much of this am I doing for them and how much am I doing for me? And it's a really big self-love piece to say, well, now I'm going to actually build the legacy I want, to pour myself into the work that means a lot to me. And hopefully my family will enjoy it or respect it or honor it, but maybe they won't. But this is the path I have to take.
I feel like a lot of young people can contend with this, especially when it comes to college and majors. And I, working with when I was a professor working with undergraduate students, I heard this a lot. Well, my parents want me to go to med school, or my parents want me to do this and that, but I really want to do this. And yeah, it's fascinating because I'm smiling because the work that I'm doing now, my journey into entrepreneurship, which by the way, the time we're recording is hasn't been very long. I built my business as a result of the pandemic, right? Where I feel like during COVID-19, this collective retreat of, oh, again, what am I doing here? What is my life? And then B, having my daughter and me wanting to role model for her that if you want, you shouldn't have to do what people expect you to do. If you in your heart and soul have this desire to do something, then go for it. And so yeah, those were two events or two moments where that really finally, after many years of wanting to be a business owner, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. And that meant, in my journey, walking away from tenure track professor, full-time academia, which that came with its own feelings of shame and guilt and like, oh no, I don't want to let anyone down. And, having conversations with my husband about, I want to leave my 9 to 5 digital marketing agency job because I feel really strongly about this. I feel like I could have impact and make a difference. It's not easy, especially when conventionally it's like, why would you do that? Why would you leave your 9 to 5 job? You have a baby on the way. But I mean, Rachel, like when the feeling is strong, when Mama Universe, is pulling at you gotta go. And I will say, when my dad passed away, that was also the time of my Saturn return, which was all like, so that was a like astrologically, my butt was getting kicked around a little bit anyway. It was like, you need to go, girl. You need to leave and do this other thing. So yeah, it's just fascinating looking back on how these things happen in our lives that make such a difference. And sometimes you don't even find out till years later, like, oh, that happened because of this thing over here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. Well, I have one kind of final question, I think, which is, when you were talking about the theater, it was making me think about, what if we've talked a little bit about the college age mindset that can come up a lot, but what if somebody is middle age or even older than that, and they're suddenly realizing, I want to get involved in community theater, or I want to learn how to sing, but they're also feeling embarrassed or shy, or they're kind of thinking that's for young people, or this feeling of, what if they feel that they're too old or they missed an opportunity, like dance, I know, and sports too. It's like, those are fields where the people starring in the events are, teenagers and young 20s, not 40, 50, 60-year-olds. So I don't know if you have any thoughts for people in an older age bracket, but I'm curious what kind of encouragement you could give to someone who's in that stage of life, who's starting to feel this desire to do something, but they're also not letting themselves go for it. Maybe because of age or other factors. Maybe it's time too. We don't have as much time when you have kids and a job or a business or whatever to have a lot of hobbies.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So one of the aspects of the framework that I use with my coaching clients, the first piece of it is model. And what I mean by that is seeking out role models. And these could be people that you know in real life, or people that you aspire to be, right? So for me personally, Oprah is one of my role models of who I aspire to be. And something that's helped me a lot, because I totally get it. And I'm not in my 50s or 60s, but I'm like, oh no, I've missed all this time because of blah, blah, blah. Look at the success stories of folks that we admire. You hear these stories of authors or performers or entrepreneurs who had several failed ventures, who went through a really tough time. I mean, it's real life examples of that hero's journey, that we go through this valley of darkness, or this time of finding ourselves. But then when we come out of it and find good mentorship and find community. Listen, I'm a ballroom dancer and I've done competitive ballroom. There are folks out there. There are senior levels of ballroom competition. It's never too late to dance. And the research shows that doing things like singing and dancing and the arts are really good for our, for our brains and for, for memory. And so there are many benefits to doing creative arts. There are so many opportunities online, right? So even just free YouTube classes with writing or singing, there there is a plethora of information out there. And I would just say to those folks that if there's something that you want to do, gosh, I mean, there are people getting PhDs, right? You know, like from an educational standpoint, if there's something that you've wanted to do and feeling that you may have missed the boat on that, I would invite you to ask yourself where that's coming from, because maybe the root cause of it is these like feelings of not enoughness or scarcity, right? When just exploring that, as we talked about before, and realizing that no, we have so many resources nowadays at our disposal to learn all the things like than ever before, that, and communities tied to that, so that you have folks alongside you on the journey. I think, I don't know, and maybe this is me, just that's my vibe, is anything is possible, right? That the possibilities are infinite and endless.
Well, I agree with you on that.
Well, that's good.
Yes. And I mean, scientifically, the universe is expanding and there's so much going on. All of that was so good. And I especially was feeling the vibe of the models and the mentors. Right now, I'm taking a program from a YouTuber who I really admire. And it's amazing to me because I watched his videos for years and now I'm on live calls with him. And yes, it's not a one-on-one. I'm in the group, but still, it's like you say, it's not too late to engage. We can find the mentor, the people who light you up with a fire every time you see them, and remembering, okay, they're doing it, so there's a possibility that I can do it as well. And keeping that idea and that belief in yourself at the forefront as you engage with it. And I also love how you brought up that it's good for the brain to do these new things, and that makes it even more fun, because then it's like, okay, it's fun. There's music. If we're talking about music or dancing, it's good for your brain. You're going to meet new people. Like, what's the reason not to do it? Really, there's so many reasons to do it.
Yeah, push past the resistance, you know, that oftentimes when you're meeting your edge with something, you listen to that inner muse, right? Sometimes it's like, yeah, you're good to go. You're safe. It'll be transformative. I mean, I know for me, I started doing ballroom when I was finishing up my PhD. I tell people I would not have finished my dissertation without ballroom dancing, because I would write and then I would dance. And then
I love it.
And I met my husband, and you know what I mean? So you never know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Well, tell us one or two places that you want listeners to keep up with you, to follow along. And I'll have lots of links below, but if there's a place where that's your top place where you like to show up in the online world.
Sure. So my website is rowenawinkler.com. And you can find me on Instagram at rbwinkler PhD.
Wonderful. And I feel that you're such an approachable person who has come from academia. I mean, I did a master's, so I didn't go full on PhD route, but, and not to stereotype in a negative way, but for some people, academics are a little bit unapproachable, or they're just so high level that they're not relatable. And I don't feel that with you. Like, your relatability, maybe because it was communication, or maybe because you love the art so much, it's very easy to engage with you. And it also, to me, is an extra delight of your wealth of experience from different areas of life, and the work that you do with people, how it's astrology and human design. And I'm sure you're bringing in your professor ideas and your artist, theater, musical ideas. And so what a beautiful combination you have. And I love that it's out of the box, and it feels to me, at least, that you're not afraid to be out of the box and be a person who has all of these qualities, that then it's like, well, I can work with people in so many good ways because of all of the interests and expertise that you have.
Well, I really appreciate that, Rachel. I receive all of that. And it took me a while to get here. As I mentioned, all that work that I've done over the years, I finally embraced the fact that I am a multi-hyphenate, that I do have a
Mhm.
lot of gifts and talents that I'm working toward integrating in the work that I do. And yeah, no offense taken. I left academia full time for a reason
Mm.
because of the archetypes that you mentioned. So yeah, no, that really noted, and I wholeheartedly agree.
Yes. Oh, good. And I hope that a listener who feels they're very multi-hyphenate, multi-passionate sees you and sees another example. She seems happy. She seems like she's finding her way. She's not like struggling and desperate. And you're blossoming with all of that, those parts of you. So thank you so much for modeling that for all of
Yeah,
us.
I will leave you all with one more quote. This is, and this will take us full circle, I think. This is something that I've tweaked a little bit from Ben Platt, who won the Tony Award for Dear Evan Hansen, the musical. And the quote is this: "What makes you different makes you powerful. What makes you different makes you powerful." So I would leave folks listening, just remember that those things that make you feel weird or different or strange or small, that's your light. That's what's going to draw people to you. That is your charisma. That is your gift. So don't take that lightly. It's really powerful, and you can do so much with it.
Thank you for ending with that quote. That was really good. And that's an area for me, that's always my growing edge of, all right, my weirdness is okay. Like, what makes me weird? I'm embracing it. I'm embracing it. Absolutely. Okay, I am here to tell you about my free manifesting short course that you can download below. It's 5 days of doodling and manifesting, getting you to look at manifesting in a fresh new way and getting that creative muscle working so you can start making new connections and seeing new things that you have never seen before. Go ahead and download that free course below.